And a very good morning to you. Welcome along to Wednesday morning's OTB AM. The Champions League was back with a bang last night. A Leo Messi hat-trick, a last-minute winner in stoppage time for Liverpool in an epic encounter against PSG, and loads more besides. We'll get into that with Graham Hunter a little bit later on. But the most important thing of all is that Owen is back from his sojourn on the main show. The main show.
That's what we call it?
A big promo.
That's what JP calls it anyway, yeah?
That's what it gets called accidentally in meetings.
Not accidentally. There's a little truth to it all, isn't there?
And then, it's a little simmering sibling rivalry starts.
Yeah, that's it. I think boiling rivalries is how we do it. I don't think JP, who is the evening producer, and Tommy, who's our producer, talk anymore, actually. I think they just show each other the cold shoulder, quick show the middle finger every morning when they walk in the door, sort of thing. Exactly.
Kind of subtle ones.
Yeah, quick, goes over and Tommy pinches and stuff. It's like F you, JP, when he walks in the door. That's their relationship. It kind of represents the entire rivalry.
Yeah, and so you were on air when all the drama was happening.
Yeah, it's weird. I presume Anfield sounded amazing last night. Obviously, you don't actually hear anything when you're watching it without any sound, but one of those amazing poetic nights. And I woke up this morning and I see on Twitter that Bobby is trending. So thankfully I wasn't at home to be scrolling through Twitter looking at Liverpool fans referring to one of their players who they've never met before as one of their own mates, like using the term Bobby, which is something that kind of grinds my gears. But sure, let them have their night and enjoy what happened at Anfield.
Wow, one night on the evening show and you're already bitter. Okay, here, I'll tell you what's coming up on the show this morning. A very busy show for you. Champions League with Graham Hunter coming up in about 5 minutes' time. We're going to bring you through the sports pages. We're going to talk about the Liverpool scenario, and we're going to talk about the NFL with Mike Carlson. The Week 2 games are in the books. Week 3 to look forward to. We'll talk with Mike a little bit later on. First, let's get straight into the papers this morning.
OTB AM.
Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.
Okay, so the Irish Times lead with Firmino leaves it late to ruin PSG's unlikely comeback. Klopp opens campaign with resolute intent. I love the drop quote here. It's Mbappe was kept on the margins of the contest by the Scotland captain's intelligent marking. That's one of those pieces that you write. 85 minutes, you're going, grand, this is great. Mbappe, where the hell are you? And then, but then it's too late because then something else happens and you don't have time to take it out. I mean, it is the curse of having to write match reports on the whistle. Mbappe, where was he? And I was like, oh God, there he is. And then it's like, oh, hang on, he's just giving the ball away.
Well, the thing is, if you're writing at Anfield, at least you can actually have a paragraph that every Liverpool fan is expected to read this morning, which is a magical night at Anfield. So you can write your piece of poetry about how this is supposedly the greatest stadium in the world and have that paragraph just copy and paste it into your article at some point. Even if it's a bore and all draw, it's still one of the magical European nights at Anfield. So at least you could write half your article before you actually arrive at the stadium.
It was a legit magical night, though.
You've got tongue in cheek. It was.
You've got Neymar and Mbappe, and they're 2-0 down, and then it's like, balls, it's 2-all. And then it's like, it's an absolute classic of a game.
How the hell did Roberto Firmino's goal go in? Just like in terms of pure physics, in terms of the fact that the ball is not supposed to actually go through your body. Like if there was a person standing in front of a ball, it collides off that person and it goes away from the goal. There was 14 PSG players between Roberto Firmino and the back of the net last night, and somehow it just slipped through all of their bodies. I still don't quite understand how it all happened.
What did it remind you of?
David Clifford.
It did.
I didn't want to make that. I didn't want to make that comparison because it's like, but you brought that up.
I was looking at it last night going, I've just seen this before. I've seen this film before. I know exactly what this is.
Yeah. So thank you. You brought it up. David Clifford.
Had you not brought it up last night when it happened? Did you not just
not on air? No.
Why not?
Because it's
the first thing you thought of, though.
Not the first thing I thought of. After
when
a while,
you see the
replay from the reverse angle.
The replay from the reverse angle. You're like, I've seen this.
Yeah. Or else, like to be more apt, Maradona against Belgium, which of course was what the Clifford thing reminded a lot of people of, that precise picture. So let's go with Maradona for sake of making cross-sport references.
No. Let's go with Clifford because it's the one that everybody has seen this summer. So eye-catching. Firmino returns from injury to fire Liverpool to a thrilling victory, of course, jabbing himself in the eye as the goal celebration. What did you make of Salah smashing the water bottle down?
Well, just before that, he's like this when the camera pans, so we don't actually see that bit. Then it comes back and then he smashes the water bottle down. Like, it's not like slamming the water bottle down. It's like, yeah, we just did that sort of thing. Or else, I don't know.
He hates all of his co-workers. I mean, there's a bit of tension at the moment, obviously. I thought the tension was with Mane, not Firmino. I can't keep up with the sibling rivalry.
Yeah, like I don't quite know. I would say Daniel Sturridge probably had more right to be slamming a water bottle on the ground last night after the chances he missed. But
Sturridge's header was brilliant.
It was brilliant, but he missed 2 big chances in the second half. Simple as that. The offside, that was a heavy touch from Daniel Sturridge. The ball didn't come at him with a lot of pace. And then the free header he had, which he didn't even head. It just collided off his shoulder. Like in the first half, I'm like, Daniel Sturridge is back. Kenny Cunningham was in last night and he was like, he won't last, the full game. He's better impact sub. And maybe he was right in the second half. Maybe his performance tailed off. When does he get to a point where he's able to do that for a full 90 minutes?
For a player who Klopp has repeatedly given out about his injury profile, his unwillingness to play through pain, all that kind of stuff, to have him suddenly be a meaningful contributor on a big night in the Champions League is, I think, like a new signing.
Yeah, fair play to him. Fair play to him for scoring his goal. But if you're actually if you've got designs on winning the Champions League, well, then your number 9 probably needs to convert one of those 2 huge chances in the second half to not even let yourself be in a situation where you have to have a dramatic finale.
Okay, so appetite for change, unanimous Central Council support for second-tier football championship. There is a second-tier football championship coming. There will be proper change in the football championship within 25 years. I bet you within the next quarter of a century, they're going to finally fix the football championship structures. So the Irish...
No, there'll be changes. They won't fix it, but there will be change.
The Irish Independent. Mayo back Leahy as row heats up. County Board endorsed manager for 2019 and criticised Exile Group's calculated statement. The County Board's statement in response to the departed Mayo footballers. We're the only ones calling them the departed, by the way. That was a straight off the cuff yesterday. Tom was like, call them the departed. Anyway, so the County Board statement was very strong about this, and they're basically accusing the players of the Carnacon players really of trying to agitate to cause the most distress possible. And that was kind of the point that the County Board secretary was making with you last night, that they believed that there was a coup underway that they thwarted that Sunday afternoon when that meeting was supposed to happen. That was kind of the point that he was making yesterday. So Limerick begin defensive crown with Cork rematch. The fixtures are out for the Munster Hurling Championship next year, and it looks like they are going to on May the 19th. They're going to have a bye in the first round, Limerick will have, and then May the 19th is the first one, so May the 12th is that one. Right, let's get to the Champions League. Here is Jonathan Higgins of OTB AM in Anfield last night.
Liverpool have just beaten PSG 3-2 with a dramatic late Bobby Firmino winner. I'm Jonathan Higgins here for OTB AM. We're going to find out what the fans thought of that.
You can't find nothing now to top that. That is the best. That's the best atmosphere in the world.
I wasn't expecting any less, to be honest with you. I'm made up that we turned up there tonight for the boys. Obviously, seems like we're fearless at the minute.
Atmosphere was amazing. I mean, this is what European nights are all about, isn't it? This is 2 of the best teams in Europe coming head to head in a competition.
There's nights like tonight to remind you that this is why you keep coming back. It's amazing. A European night, you just couldn't miss it. You travel anyway. You'd swim over the Irish Sea to get here.
Andy Robertson. There were some really close contenders tonight, but Robbo for me was fantastic. He kept Mbappe in his pocket. There was a couple of moments where he lost him, but he kept his composure. He got his head straight back into the game, and I don't think as a manager you can ask any more from the young man.
Well, it's between Andy Robbo and James Milner for me. I thought they both worked hard, very hard, dug deep, and obviously on a night like tonight, obviously you want to get Anfield on side, and I thought Andy Robbo or James Milner for me, definitely.
Probably Andy Robertson, I'd say. Yeah, he made Neymar look like he wasn't even on the pitch. He made Mbappe look like he wasn't even on the pitch, so big respect to him. He's good, brilliant, yeah.
It's hard between Milner and Robbo. Both of the strengths. Any one of them, Wijnaldum, any one of them. There's no way you can pick a man of the match. Every one of them played too good. You know what I mean? And you say they've got money, but we've got passion.
We got up at 1:30 this morning. Had to drive from Clarny in County Kerry in Ireland to Tralee, about a 40-minute drive on a bus for 4 hours to Dublin. Dublin Port to Holyhead. Holyhead to here, was in Liverpool about 3 o'clock and then made it to Anfield.
Yeah, to be fair, Gary Neville's a mank at the end of the day, so our boys need to concentrate on our football, and we've done just that tonight, so made up for us. We just need to keep our blinkers on and focus on on whatever football's the next game. So I made up for the lads, honestly, really well played.
There's no way you can forget about nights like that. Why can't we go for everything? Playing like that, our strongest squad, why can't we go for everything? Our team's unreal.
We're going for everything this season. We'll win the Champions League. We'll win the league, easy. Done.
If that's the mentality in Manchester United, he can have it that way. But in Liverpool, it's completely different. European nights are special, and that's the way it'll be.
I feel exactly the same about the Gary Neville comment as I did the day he made it, which was Manchester United are in this tournament and they're afraid of us. Manchester United are afraid of us, and on that performance, they should be.
So there we are. That's what the fans thought after a magical night at Anfield. That's what European football is all about. I'm Jonathan Higgins for OTB AM.
What did you say there, Owen? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
There is kind of echoes of Munster about Liverpool. It's like
they playing red. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's it. I don't know. We can have this conversation some other time. It's great for them.
Graham Hunter is on the line. Good morning to you, Graham. How you doing?
Yeah, well, I'm not quite as enthusiastic as Hurricane Higgins, but near it.
I'd say you are, though. I mean, we were deigning to begin to pretend that maybe Leo Messi might be on some kind of gentle, slow decline, but last night he blew off the cobwebs with his customary hat-trick.
Yeah, Jerry, you're not Danish, and you've just said that to make a good conversation because I know you too well. You never for a second thought Leo Messi was any slippery slope. I remember when we set up the season, we were talking on this beautiful Skype medium, and we talked about the way in which Leo Messi assumed the armband from Andres Iniesta, stood up before the Boca Juniors game in the Gamper tournament, and I made a short speech, but nonetheless an impactful one. When he speaks, people listen. He's done more of that speaking recently, talking about Ricky Puig, the kid coming through, Arthur, the Brazilian, who he thinks is wonderful. Everybody thinks he's wonderful except for the coach, Valverde. Doesn't seem to want to play him, apart from a little cameo last night, which was brilliant. And the thing that Leo Messi said was, I've inherited this captain's armband from really important people, great footballers, Xavi, Iniesta. And the thing I promise you all, you can finish the sentence. He told the crowd that he had a thorn in his side and that his single most important task would be to bring them back this traditional, beautiful, historic trophy that we love so much. And he was talking about the Champions League trophy. And one of the things I've learned, maybe because you cover so many different sports so well and off the ball, maybe this is hackneyed to your listeners or to you, but when an individual, a brilliant individual, male or female, sports person or a team, outright focuses on something in a way that's akin to, say, a place kicker, focusing on the ball, going through the posts, or somebody who's got the yips, or maybe driving straight, and they focus, and the sports psychology comes in. When a group as talented as, say, Real Madrid, Liverpool, United, or Barcelona say, as a group we're focused on this particular target above anything else, what tends to happen, and Real Madrid is a case in point, is that they do it. The psychology of saying, get everything else out of the way, this is what we're going to put all our efforts towards, and this is where we'll find our special peaks. It tends to happen, which is why I put Barcelona before last night in a group of probably only 4 clubs I believe can win the Champions League. They're City, Liverpool, Atletico Madrid, and Barca. That's my group. And I'll go back to the performance. Messi said, it's my duty, it's my job. And yeah, he stood out with that 8th Champions League hat-trick. 2 of the goals were extremely good. One of them was just routinely good. But the thing I thought was really important, hand back to you, was that all around him, players woke up. It was only PSV, but they played very cleverly. The players woke up in a way that they're going to need to do if they're going to avoid the smashings they took in Paris, Turin and Rome over the last 3 seasons. Rakitic was at it. Piqué was extraordinary. Ter Stegen wants to win back the number 1 place from Manuel Neuer, which he should have had all summer. Dembele has found a new level of maturity because the skill level was there. And Coutinho played, even though he didn't score, one of his best, most complete games for Barca last night. And across the team, you could pick out Busquets or whatever. And I'm beginning to sound like the fans at Anfield last night talking to Hurricane Higgins, but they were very good.
Yeah. Liverpool were very good last night. You said pre-tournament you thought that they were one of 4 teams who can win it. So presumably last night just made you even more confident that this is a team who are actually built for success in the Champions League, particularly.
I think they are. I think the squad's been reconstructed, so we haven't seen very much of Vidal yet. We've seen glimpses of the guy called Malcolm, the Brazilian winger bought from Bordeaux, to such embarrassment for poor old Roma, who had fans waiting at the airport for him. Dembele has changed. Dembele at 21, just turned 21, and somebody who's... You remember how footballers sometimes who are born very tall never learn to jump, and therefore you look at a 6'4" guy, often particularly strikers, and because they've always been taller than ever, Dembele's always had this extraordinary pace and this natural change of balance that throws people and quite quick feet, and therefore he's never had to learn some of the housekeeping around him that makes you an elite footballer rather than just a very attractive one. But you can see he's learning that, and one of the things that makes me think that Barcelona are a genuine threat to win this tournament is that he's changing. And over the last couple of seasons, what we've seen is Luis Suarez, I think it's 1 goal in 13 Champions League matches now, and only 1 away goal in about 3 years in the Champions League. So either he has to change, which I'm not convinced is going to happen in the away matches, let's see, or somebody else has to take the burden off Messi. You talked about constructed to win it. I think across the board, Barcelona are going to see more Champions League goals from, say, some from Malcolm, some from Munir, but principally from Dembele, and Coutinho spreads the load. Messi has other foils in the team to open space, to beat players, and therefore walking, a shoe-in, walking all the way into lifting up the title next June. I'm not saying that. They've been pretty 8-stone weaklings since they won the treble in 2015. Teams have bullied them. Big teams have known how to do damage to them. I think it's changing a little bit. And I think also we'll come back to this, I detect Gerard Piqué thinking, I now own the Davis Cup. I'm into esports and a big investment with Cesc Fabregas and Leo Messi. He's got employees in his online football game. Gerard Piqué's work, the last thing left of Gerard Piqué's football world is actually playing the game, because his head is in all kinds of other things. But he's not losing his focus or his performance level because, and again, this is interpretation rather than hard fact, I think he wants to sign off, no longer a Spain player, he wants to sign off with Champions League victory or victories. And for his level right now, his competitive level is brilliant. He's digging the team out a lot because they're counter-attacked against. Therefore, although I don't make them outstanding single favourites, they're really entertaining to watch right now, and I think that they're better constructed.
Graham, I cannot believe that you've left Juventus out of your 4-team group capable of winning the Champions League. They do have the best footballer in the world right now.
Yeah, Dybala, is it? Would you like to specify?
Well, I know I'm obviously you're a Messi guy. I think over the last, if you look at say what FIFA think and their shortlist for the best, if we take that, I know it's something that kind of grinds your gears at the moment. You could take that in isolation. You could take the World Cup in isolation. You could take the last 6 months in isolation, and the Ronaldo clan are going strong. But no matter what side you're on in that debate, do you not think that his addition to the side this year, do you think they've lost too much to put in a real challenge to win the Champions League this year? They're obviously in action tonight. I just think that maybe when it comes to Liverpool and Manchester City, Juventus, and particularly when it comes to Atletico Madrid, Juventus are right up there.
Look, it would be foolish of me to say that your arguments don't have weight. I do like your Al Bundy Modern Family, guess what grinds my gears thing. That's very good indeed. I'll tell you this. When Juve had their real big chances, 2015 in Berlin against Barcelona, and then in Cardiff a couple of years later against Real Madrid, with stronger squad than they have now, and I think a better starting 11, they blew it for one reason or another. They didn't have that cutting edge. They're one of the unfortunate teams, in my opinion, despite how close eventually Napoli looked as if they might run them last season, that don't operate in a league which is sufficiently testing week in, week out to keep them razor sharp for the Champions League in terms of, until now, that cutting edge that gets you over the line, because they've reached 2 finals. I don't believe that even though Cristiano Ronaldo adds them goals, that they are defensively strong enough. I think it was time for Buffon to move on. I'm not a great believer in their replacement keeper. I don't think that they've got enough quality across the squad. And Maxi Allegri, in terms of being able to get a group, like for example, what the hell happened at halftime in Cardiff when they're in the game and they all fall out with each other and start turning on each other. There's a dispute between the fan base, Allegri and Dybala, about what game time this pocket genius, who could be the player that gives them the extra edge, how much he should have. I'm going to watch them at the Mestalla tonight. And frankly, because Valencia are having so many difficulties psychologically, from being a team in a hurry to now a team that's hurrying things, making rash passes, going offside when they shouldn't, injury plagued, there's a fighting chance Juventus take maybe a big dividend from the Mestalla tonight in a match that they could have feared if Valencia were in top gear. Across their side, I see ageing players. I see players who until now haven't been good enough. And while Ronaldo is there specifically to do what you say they might be able to do. He's there to win the Champions League. He's there in his mind to win the treble, his first ever treble, and to tilt at the Ballon d'Or again. But I don't have Juventus in my group, and I don't believe that come June you'll be sort of doing this to me and saying, see, I told you so, in Irish or in Italian.
Graham, great stuff. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks a million.
Enjoy your football.
Graham Hunter giving us some thoughts on a pretty good opening day of the Champions League, in fairness. Like the group stages, there's been one good group stages in the last 8 or 9, 1 year of good group stages.
It was last year. The group stages are good again. The group stages are good again.
They're not always good again. There's a lot of... somebody did make the point that this year it could be good because all the crap teams are in the same group.
But like Young Boys and Manchester United.
And that's at Owen Sheehan on Twitter. Anyway, they were good. They were proper good. Yesterday there were enough good games. I'm still not sure about the 6 o'clock and the 8 o'clock kickoffs.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know. We won't know until really near the end of the group stages when or maybe we won't get fatigued from just watching whatever it is, 400 matches of football between Tuesday and Thursday every single week. I don't think it will. Like, I think the Champions League shows up enough novel pairings. It depends how much European football you're watching in general. Like, if you're watching all the domestic leagues around football, then you might get a bit tired of watching all these teams in Champions League. Whereas just the pure process of watching PSG last night, which would have been the first time for most people, because who the hell watches the French league, would have been a novelty in itself and would have been enjoying itself.
Yeah, some big results from around Europe. We'll have a look at them now. Have a look at these. So Barcelona beat PSV 4-0. Inter beat Spurs 2-1. Spurs were 1-0 up with about 5 minutes left to go in that game. Inter equalised, went completely mad, and you're thinking, okay, that's going to be a 1-1 draw because it's Inter. And then, no, it's Spurs. It's Inter Milan 2, Spurs 1. Club Brugge 0, Borussia Dortmund 1, Red Star Belgrade 0, Napoli 0. Have you got a proper pronunciation of?
Kurvnesvezda.
Galatasaray beat Lokomotiv Moscow 3-0, Liverpool beat Paris Saint-Germain 3-2. Atletico were in Monaco and won 2-1, and Schalke beat Porto. Sorry, Schalke and Porto drew 1-1. We were chatting yesterday, like Man City are the favourites for the competition. That didn't make any sense to me. Definitely would have had Liverpool as big as 12-1 pre-kickoff last night. I'm sure they've come in.
12-1's a great price for Liverpool, even pre-kickoff. I know it's quite revisionist to say that after what we've just witnessed at Anfield and all that, but I think that's a fantastic price. City, so what is it? City, Barcelona, then Liverpool, probably at this point. I'm not sure about Graham's discounting of Juventus completely. Like, when you have the best player in the world in your team, and this is the most obvious point you could ever make about any sport, you've got a chance of winning the tournaments that you are playing in. Like, we could play alongside Cristiano Ronaldo and we'd feel that we have a chance of winning the Champions League. No?
I mean, yeah, probably not. They realised pretty quickly.
That played up front, like.
That guy shouldn't really be here.
If he played on the left of the three, I was in the middle and you were on the right, we'd be fine. It's like, it would just be Ronaldo. We'd kind of make decoy runs or jogs, and Ronaldo would do all the work and we'd go all the way.
I think, so Barcelona are 6s at the moment, Bayern Munich are 8, Juve are 6 or 7, no thanks. Real Madrid as big as 9 in some places, generally 8, Paris Saint-Germain 9 or 10. No thanks. And Liverpool are now into between 7 and 9 to 1 to win. So yesterday,
I'd still have 9 to 1.
Huge price movement from. But the value was yesterday, because then obviously you could have backed them each way. You could have had 4 teams and then.
You live and learn.
No, you say this now and then you forget this time next year, and there are 3 weeks and you're like, oh, that was so shit, isn't it? It's kind of the same with the NFL. Did you back the Rams?
I was going to. They've gone into. I see their number 1 of the ESPN's power rankings. They were at 13 to 1 before the season started. Was it? What have they gone into now? Like, I don't know, 7 or 8.
Yeah, no. There's no point in checking all the stuff that you should have done when it comes to this. The other thing was Spurs were very Spursy last night.
Yeah.
Like, it's an away game. They're playing well. They're doing it despite a bit of criticism of the management for not bringing all their players. But they looked tired at the end. Is this going to be the story of them? Spurs look a bit tired.
Mauricio Pochettino looked a bit tired as well. He wasn't happy afterwards. We rarely see a tetchy Mauricio Pochettino. And last night it was very, I don't want to use the word confrontational, but he wasn't happy with some of the questions being thrown his way in the press conference afterwards. Questions of the team, questions of the players. He maintains that it was their best performance of the season. I'm not sure you can really use that as a backup when you're 1-0 up in the 85th minute and you end up losing the game. Doesn't matter what your best performance of the season is, even if your performance knocked all your other performances out of the water, that's just not good enough. And
3 defeats in a row as well.
Yeah.
That's the other bit that, like, okay, so there's an international break in the middle of it all, but let's move on. We're going to talk Liverpool in just a moment with Simon Hughes. Here's what Kenny Cunningham thought of Liverpool last night.
Brilliant victory from Liverpool. Looked as if they'd shot themselves in the foot, had the opportunity to put the game to bed at 2-1 to get 3-4-1, didn't take them, and not for the first time at this level you're made to play clinical from PSG in terms of winning the ball back off Liverpool. A good finish from Mbappe. It looked as if they're going to steal a point from the game, but credit to Liverpool, kept pushing, and James Milner in particular, like I said, looked as if PSG were going to break up the pitch, made the decision to get close, win back possession for his team 10 yards outside the PSG penalty box. That was absolutely crucial. Kept the ball in the danger area. Eventually they walked it to the feet of Firmino, and he had a huge amount to do. When we were glancing at the TV screen, you weren't thinking goal here. You know, he's done fantastically well. Just kind of feinted to shoot off his left hand side, checked onto his right, and then just arrowed the ball into the far corner. Brilliant finish.
Yeah, you will be with us again tomorrow evening to give your more considered take on everything there. But just briefly, we've got about a minute before we wrap, the idea of winning it late. Like, say, the absolute body blow that Spurs would have taken earlier on, it obviously works in the other direction for Liverpool, where that win, it's actually a much bigger win, it'll feel to them, than it would have been if they'd held out at 2-0. Yeah,
you almost feel invincible, I would have thought, Owen, going forward, because you never doubt yourself. You almost feel as if you're never beaten. Like, going forward now in this competition, even in the Premiership, you know, if you find yourself in a situation of getting pegged back or behind, you keep believing. You know what I mean? Your head doesn't get down, because you know you've done it before and you can do it again. So it's a great victory in one respect, you're right, but psychologically, in terms of winning the game that late against a team of this quality, is absolutely huge from a psychological point of view.
All right, I can welcome Simon Hughes to the programme now to talk about the game at Anfield last night. Simon, you were there. It looked like, we were talking about those cliched, amazing European nights at Anfield, but this is right up there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's strange at the start of a season and you're in September and you're talking about a really important European fixture. 10 minutes before the kickoff, it was very quiet inside Anfield, and I was thinking, is it going to be one of those nights of people? Is it just too early in the season for a really important game, which is going to sort of define the way things are going to be? And suddenly, on kickoff, the noise was deafening, and I think Liverpool players, reacted to that and then, made it even more hostile for the Paris Saint-Germain players, because Liverpool started off so well. Really on the front foot. I think they had 8 corners in the first 25 minutes, which, I doubt the Paris Saint-Germain have come across that sort of bombardment in the French league. I just think that Liverpool, just touching on what was just said there, I mean, I do agree. I think that Liverpool probably learned more and will take a lot more from having the setback of conceding the 2 goals and then finding a way to recover and actually win the game. They haven't done that before against top quality opposition under Jurgen Klopp. And I think it's the sort of thing that, players talk about, that when they refer back to moments where they've been in really sticky patches and tried to find, some energy resources and some, let's be honest, as soon as Paris Saint-Germain scored, Liverpool were sort of back on the front foot straight away and trying to attack and with purpose. It didn't seem to shake them as much as you would have thought. And I thought that was just so impressive, the way Liverpool did that. And despite what Thomas Tuchel said after the game, where he seemed a little bit confused about, why things had ended the way they had, I think it probably was quite difficult to compute because you wouldn't expect a team who's probably got, a track record of throwing away leads to then come back and actually win the game, having thrown away a lead. So I just think it's such an enormous victory for Liverpool. It'll give them, a massive amount of confidence. And, it's in the sort of the small details of this period of the season, it's really important as well because obviously Napoli drew last night in Belgrade. And if Liverpool is drawn, they'd not been up against under pressure to really get something in Naples in a couple of weeks' time. So, yeah, I think it ticks all the boxes in a number of ways.
Yeah, just on that topic of confidence, like looking at some of Jurgen Klopp's comments this morning in the newspapers, he talks about this idea of if you put yourself into his shoes 2 or 3 years ago, that this sort of night would be almost unimaginable, that Liverpool fans have to be quite appreciative of where they've come from to get to this point where they're beating one of Europe's best and outclassing a team with the class of PSG on a night like last night. Like, is that a significant moment last night in your view where Liverpool have finally proven that, yes, they are finally good enough to go toe-to-toe with Europe, despite the fact that most of us would have suspected that this was already the case even 12 months ago?
Yeah, I think it is easy to be blasé a little bit about it because, Liverpool have travelled a long distance in a short period of time. I mean, I think when Liverpool beat Borussia Dortmund, I think I put in my report, I hope this was right, there was 10... Klopp has made 10 changes since that night when they went and beat Borussia Dortmund, and if you in the Europa League, which was 2.5 years ago, and on that night, you could say that Liverpool were quite fortunate really to win the game, in cold analysis. But last night, it was a very different sort of game, very different sort of performance. Liverpool, as we discussed, have had the lead, and easy to say it was thrown away, but you are playing against absolute top quality opposition, in attack. Neymar and Mbappe, despite Liverpool's dominance, particularly in the first half, were such a threat on the counter-attack. And they were always going to have chances. You can't, if you're going to attack a team of that quality, you're always going to surrender some opportunities to the opposition when they've got that level of quality. It's just the nature of football. I think it's impossible not to. It's how you react in those situations and the strength of your goalkeeper and many other things. But
we've got that team up there now, actually. So Mignolet goals, Klein right back, Lovren, Sacco centre backs, Alberto Moreno left back, Emre Can, James Milner, Lallana, Firmino, Coutinho, and Divock Origi.
Yeah. So it's two players who got that wrong. Actually, so Firmino came on, didn't he? So it is one. Yeah. I mean, I think Milner really symbolises this sort of resurgence from Liverpool because. Who would have said 2 years ago when he was, stoically running up and down the left wing from left back, that he'd now be, which he is. Let's be honest. I thought he was the best player on the pitch last night by a mile. Milner, he set the tone. Him and Henderson in midfield. I know Jordan Henderson's got his critics, but I thought he was fantastic last night. It was a really important performance for him. Because in that area of the pitch where you've got Neymar and Mbappe and Cavani's sort of a much maligned centre forward, but he does score goals and drop into spaces which is difficult to get around because he's so big. And I thought those two were fantastic. But Milner, for me, he's the last, really survivor from that Dortmund game that started the game last night, and he was just outstanding from start to finish. And he has been in every game this season. He looks like he's actually, really embraced the competition that Klopp's got in midfield now. And I think Klopp's doing it the right way because, your players who've done well for you last season and you sign new players, I think bombing them out as early on, it probably sends out the wrong signals, and this develops a trust around, players that have got experience and players that have been there for a reasonable amount of time. And I just think it sends out all the right messages. And for me, James Milner's just been brilliant for Liverpool and looks at home at the very highest stage.
Well, do we talk about Sturridge then? Because if Sturridge was to have any kind of recovery akin to what James Milner has had, then suddenly this is the most potent attacking force in world football, because we've seen the absolute peak of what Daniel Sturridge can do, and when he was fit for a period of time, he was absolutely sensational. It's a long time since we've seen that. But the headed finish last night in the first half was the type of instinctive goal that truly world-class scorers score. There were some issues in the second half, as Owen was pointing out a little bit earlier on. But like, for him to even be a functional member of the team, that you can afford to leave Firmino on the bench because of injury, like, that's a sensational development, really. This is somebody who did not have any trust from the manager. Like, it seemed like even at the end of last season.
Yeah. I mean, it's a remarkable recovery, and I think, again, it sort of reflects the way Klopp thinks about football. That he tries his best to get every ounce of a player that he works with. I mean, we've seen how Simon Mignolet, for example, he's tried his best to sort of give him every opportunity to become Liverpool's number one, and obviously that didn't work out. But he will give chances, Jurgen Klopp, and who would have said last season, while Daniel Sturridge was on loan at West Brom, playing 6 games without scoring a goal and getting injured again, that this sort of night and occasion would be inside him. And I thought last night, I mean, you could tell that Firmino is such a important player for Liverpool in terms of the work rate that he offers. He allows the other players around him to play better. And I think when he doesn't play, you notice a bit of a drop in Liverpool's performances, particularly last season when Dominic Solanke and Danny Ings, who tried their best, but ultimately just not quite at that level. Whereas last night, I think Sturridge offered something slightly different. His movement and as he just said there, his finishing. I think as a finisher, he's probably the coolest and calmest still at the club. And if you can keep him fit, he's certainly an improvement and a much better option than the two players that I just mentioned there last season. So, if he were to contribute, 10 to 15 goals throughout the course of this season, I think it'd be an outstanding, sort of recovery from him. He's just got to stay fit, and that's always been his problem, really. And I wouldn't have thought at the age of 29 that Klopp would still be offering opportunities to that sort of players. I think that's what sort of, almost a nice subplot to the whole Liverpool story, that it's not just, the emergence of this team isn't really, as much as it's about Virgil van Dijk signing for £75 million and a goalkeeper for what was a world record fee. There are a lot of players who just are contributing in very special ways that you just wouldn't have thought would have been capable of doing so. And maybe Daniel Sturridge, there might just be a bit more life left in him, and he could, as he proved last night, score against the highest standard opposition.
Well, what it speaks to is a manager who is getting the most out of his available resources, who is not bearing grudges, who is actually just trying to manage things the way that you would do in the cold light of day if this was like a really easy thing to do, when actually, there's a 1,000 egos in that changing room, and the ownership structure and all the stuff the club has to deal with. It seems like he's kind of rising to his full potential himself at the moment as well.
Definitely. I mean, I think this is now, it's clear that this is now Jurgen Klopp's team. I mean, it's got his personality, stamped all over it. And Liverpool have become Jurgen Klopp's club. I mean, a lot has changed at Liverpool behind the scenes, since Jurgen Klopp came, and I just think his natural enthusiasm, as I suppose, without being too corny, Bill Shankly would describe, which I just think natural enthusiasm is such an important ingredient in any team, and you can see every single player just is loving playing football. They're absolutely loving playing this style of football, and his presence has sort of sorted out a lot of the problems that were at Liverpool. I don't think they papers over the cracks. I think Liverpool have become a club that's a lot more together, and things are sort of making a lot of sense in a way that they didn't in the past because of Klopp's guidance. And that had always been sort of my criticism of Fenway Sports Group, because I think they thought that an inexperienced manager like Brendan Rodgers, which he was at the time, who remember still took Liverpool as close to the title as they ever have, but he didn't have that sort of background or experience behind him to know how to deal with certain situations which are, going to arise when you're Liverpool's manager, which is I still think it's one of the most difficult jobs in world football to this challenge of trying to rise a club that hasn't won a league title in such a long period of time. And for me, Liverpool look like if you don't go much closer than they were last season, I'd be very surprised. I mean, I think for me, it's got to be between them, City and Chelsea to really to have a real go at the Premier League this year.
Yeah. It seems that every time Liverpool win a game now, there's a new stat on Twitter as to what the last year was when they won X amount of games consecutively. And the one that's on everybody's timelines this morning, I think, is 1961, the last time they won six competitive matches, their first 6 competitive matches of the season. At what point does that begin to seep into the squad? Will it seep into the squad at all? You mentioned Bill Shankly there. It's obviously the club steeped in as much history as any other in European football, really. Do you think that Jurgen Klopp, of course he's aware of it, but do you think he'll allow that to kind of heighten the sense of achievement that might be at the end of this road they're travelling down?
Well, I mean, Jurgen Klopp is always adamant that he doesn't read any newspapers or things like that. I think he, whatever stat or fact or piece of history that may weigh heavily on a manager's shoulders, he always tries to somehow turn it into a overwhelming positive. What I really sort of love about watching this Liverpool is that they almost play in an unconscious way. That they sort of, everything's become very natural for the players. The players look like they're playing naturally in a way that perhaps some of the teams of the past which have gone close, some of the players weren't playing in the most natural positions, whereas Klopp has managed to find the most natural positions for each player and responsibilities for each player. And I just think they're so difficult to beat as a consequence of that. The players seem like they're being themselves off the pitch and on the pitch. And I know it sounds like a big Liverpool loving, and it's a club which is I think I've written about this in the past, where it is a prisoner of its past, because as soon as you start achieving something, straight away you're reminded of what happened 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago. But, Jurgen Klopp, it doesn't seem to bother him or faze him. He only ever tries to turn these sort of facts that are thrown at him into positives, which is reflecting on the pitch. I think it is at the moment. I mean, I don't even think Liverpool are playing at the very, very best just yet, which is a really encouraging thing. I mean, Salah was okay last night. Mane was a threat. Obviously, Firmino didn't play. So you would think that when those 3 guys sort of click into gear, that they're going to be very difficult to stop.
Yeah, it's all very positive. History teaches us that no team manages to ride a season as spectacularly well as Liverpool have started it the whole way through. So at some point we're going to see what their reaction is to a setback, and I guess, Simon, we'll catch up with you then. Thanks a million for talking to us.
No worries.
There was actually one great picture from Simon's Twitter feeds, which I just wanted to show you. It was it's Neymar standing alone on the halfway line. I call this Trent 2, Neymar 0, a portrait of a 21st century hero from the press box. That's class. That's
a really good picture. Like, even if you're not a Liverpool fan, you kind of got to laugh at that. I think we can all come together as sporting people and laugh at Neymar this morning.
I was looking at all the Man United fans kind of creeping on Liverpool last night as if is it okay for me to tell everybody I love Liverpool? Can I come out now as like a closet Liverpool fan?
Well, that's the thing. I do wonder, I'd like to hear from Manchester United fans this morning. Does the fact that this Liverpool team are so bloody likeable make Manchester United fans hate them more? Because we're all in agreement here that we all love Jurgen Klopp, we all love James Milner, Trent Alexander-Arnold, we love Daniel Sturridge, a potentially resurgent Daniel Sturridge. And I wonder if Manchester United looking at all this glorification of them thinking, oh, screw you, I hate you even more. It's like the bully at school who hates the good kids. The good kid is just so good right now and he's got such a good history, flawless record so far this season. And I think that just might stir up the pot a little bit more in the bellies of Manchester United fans. And I'm sure there'll be plenty of patronising Liverpool people who'll be tweeting Manchester United fans tonight saying, well done on your win away to Young Boys. Very good.
Didn't Man United fans get sated they're no longer hungry. They just gorged for years and years and years and years on the richest foods, on foie gras and like côte de boeuf, and then they'd have like a second starter after their main course before they had dessert. That's what life was like for Man United fans for 20 years.
Yeah.
And now they're just like, oh, no, are we not good anymore? Oh, wake me up when we're good again.
It's actually more to do. So say if you were given a
Jabba the Hutt. That's what they are now.
Say if you were given a granola bar one day for a year, do you think you'd be more hungry on the first day of the next year than you would be, say, if you were given a 3-course meal every day for a year? Just because you're fed so much, that means the hunger will come back in a more vicious way.
No,
and
I don't think so.
Just a little, they know what it's like to have that feast, and they haven't had that feast in quite some time. I don't think I think they've digested, they've gone for a walk, they've shed a few pounds, they're ready to consume a massive meal. They're ready to consume a massive meal again, Manchester United fans.
Scott Kerr says PSG were awful, made Liverpool look good, not hating but not hard with the midfield. PSG had #OTBAM. I mean, you know, come on.
There's no question that the PSG's front three is exponentially better than any other area of their team.
I also feel like computer games have ruined people's analysis of football, where in a computer game the team is always good all the time, apart from when you control it badly, but you know that the team is actually good. Most football teams have periods where they're not brilliant in matches. Almost every team, especially the Real Madrid team that has won the Champions League the last 3 seasons, have been absolutely cat for large portions of the season. This is a cup competition. What Liverpool did last night was like kind of almost kill one of their main rivals, but certainly later on in the season, and when they meet again in Paris, Liverpool will have no fear of any team in the world now as a result of what happened last night. They completely expunged any ghost that might have been around from last season, and they've started this season going, yeah, we are better than last year, because we learned from last year.
You could say Liverpool have built up a fair dose of momentum at this point.
I wouldn't say that. I'd say they're very confident. It was interesting. Simon talked about they're unconscious. They're like, he didn't say flow state, but it looks like they're a team who are in flow state at the moment.
Yeah, they're very close
and
to that.
I would argue that is actually kind of what people talk about when they talk about momentum. It's that we're not thinking about these things anymore. We're just going after something.
Yeah.
Which, when you boil it down, when you're talking about momentum, it's when a team has suddenly decided, okay, we're actually all going to collectively go for this now and not worry about the fact that defeat is possible / imminent.
Yeah, same thing.
It's not.
Exactly the same thing.
Totally different thing.
It's exactly the same thing.
Totally different thing. The Beautiful Game says Liverpool made PSG look bad. Brian Dunhue says Liverpool very impressive. I agree with both of those, actually. I think that was more about that. Lenny Clark says grind those gears, Owen. Bobby! This is a Married with Children reference.
What?
It's a Married with Children reference.
Is it?
That's what Graham said.
Oh, sorry, I didn't actually hear what Graham said. I just smiled and nodded.
Well, I mean, we see you do that a lot.
Just stare blankly. It's like
Bobby Grazzo, Married with Children.
Yeah, you know, they can have this moment where I don't like. At least I'm not a Manchester United fan, where maybe this would grind my gears a hell of a lot more. But
no, it's not. I don't know.
I'm surprised to see Danny's not trending, actually. Maybe if he had turned home one of those chances in the second half, Danny would have been trending this morning as well. I'm surprised Momo is not trending as well after he slammed his water bottle, because, you know, that's how Liverpool fans refer to their players, as, you know, their best mates.
Did you never refer to any Arsenal players with their first name? The team was never that good when you were like...
Well, no, when I was at my most, I guess... When I could have been moulded into thinking, when I was a kid, basically, Arsenal were at their best. So, of course there was. But, you know, we didn't sink to the level of referring to people by a name with which only their friend would refer to them as.
Like Colin McGregor, Connor.
Exactly.
Kieran Burns says, I wonder if United beat Juventus at home, would ye laud as much praise as ye are to Liverpool? Well, let's see if Manchester United put in a performance like that against Juventus, and it is end-to-end stuff and it's a great game. How Manchester United will beat Juventus will be like stuff the defence, a header from a corner, and Mourinho going, yeah, I told you so, I'm a genius, afterwards.
It's a matter of the victory last night, really.
Yeah, exactly. The Irish EPL fanboys out in force this morning, all in work with their Liverpool top on, no doubt.
Exactly. Typing ILY, Bobby, Momo, Danny. Who else is there? Jordan, my friend Jordan. At what point did they start calling James Milner Jimmy? I wonder.
Oh, never hear those, James. Boring James Milner. Whoever is doing his social media is a genius.
Yeah.
Whoever is in charge of that account, that guy's a genius.
I wonder, is there like a secret person who just like runs all these social media accounts for everybody in the UK?
No,
and it's kind of like Mino Raiola, social media. He just kind of represents a load of people and is making an absolute killing. Be a good business model.
I mean, if that person that James Milner ever wants to work in the media, he's not going to be short of, or she is not going to be short of a gig. Right, here's Brian Kerr and Graham Souness on Virgin Media Sport last night. Looking ahead to one of the big games tonight. It's Young Boys versus Manchester United.
Manchester United beginning their campaign against Young Boys. Jose Mourinho's also giving out about the pitch there in Bern. It's an artificial pitch, so managers are never happy, it seems.
No, it's an enormous advantage for the home team. You know, when's the last time Man United played on a plastic pitch? And it is a different game, very different game. But I think ultimately, you know, you'll see Fellaini getting on the far post from a diagonal ball, heading it back across, and someone tapping it in. I think Man United will be fine tomorrow.
You've seen it in your crystal ball.
Yes.
What do you think, Brian?
Yeah, I think United will have too much for them. We saw young boys in the playoff round. I think that's as good as it'll get for them. I don't think they'll get many points in the group. Although the home pitch is an awkward one for them.
Now, Virgin Media Sport is the new home of European football in Ireland, with more than 400 UEFA Champions League, Europa League and Nations League games live this season. Virgin Media Sport is exclusive to all Virgin Media TV customers. You can also download the TV Anywhere app and stream all the action whenever and wherever they like. Nice swanky set the lads had.
Yeah.
Tommy was looking very good in his suit and hair.
I'm glad to know you were watching Virgin Media Sport and not watching Kenny Cunningham and Ian off the ball last night, but you know, each their own.
Darren, how are you?
I'm good, Chair.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
So while you were away, the Dublin Ladies footballers managed to assert their dominance?
Yes, so we're champions of ladies football too. The world domination continues.
The over 40s as well. You know, we didn't bring this up, but the over 40s have roll on, roll off subs. So Dublin basically have a panel of 1,000 players. Like Donegal have 17.
Yeah, but all these over 40s never won anything.
Yeah, well, we were saying
that is true.
Cluxton's going to be there in like 2 years' time or whatever it is, and it'll be like, oh, hang on a second here.
Jerry, don't fear for the over 40s competition.
Joking.
I wouldn't be surprised with the level of hysteria on off the ball when Dublin win anything.
You're not getting wound up about it either.
No.
Definitely not.
I'm in fine form. I'm going to start by taking it easy and not worrying.
A quick bit about Manchester United and whether or not. So, Brian Kerr's making the point that Young Boys, he'd seen them up to this point, that Man City or Man United are going to have too much for them. Are we sure of that? Are we sure that this current Man United team are going to go away in Europe and just routinely beat another Champions League team?
Well, we can't be sure of that, but there would be a strong suspicion that they could. Like, when was the last time they really went and did that to anybody, is the question. When was the last time that they went and just like completely said, no, we're the best team here, we're going to swat you aside, believe in what we can do attacking wise, and play with that sort of reckless abandon, not reckless abandon, but an abandon that, say, Liverpool played with last night. They clearly don't have that in their locker at the moment. It's a far more pragmatic approach. It means that they're far less likely to crash out of the group stages, you would suspect, while they're also very unlikely to actually completely destroy a team in the manner that some other teams in Europe can do. Now, that led to like a belief last season where Manchester United were supposedly poised to challenge for the Champions League title. Like, people were like, you know, give them 2 legs, you know, they go away from home and they'll park the bus and they'll bring it back to Old Trafford and they'll nip a goal at home or whatever it is. I think that's changed now. I don't think they were able to do that, but I think in terms of progression from the group stages, I think they'll coast through, no?
Well, Valencia and Juve in the same group, I don't know.
Valencia's the one that'll decide whether or not they go through, but...
Ray was making the point earlier that things are not going very well for Valencia at the moment, but like, this campaign is so long. Ultimately, it's a weird scenario, but this is a must-win game for Manchester United straight off the bat, and if there's any sense of them, like, you know, not being at it as they have been in some of these games against lesser teams just recently, then it could go pear-shaped pretty quickly.
Yeah, it is...
That period of Manchester United over, basically, is the question I'm asking.
There is certainly light at the end of the tunnel, isn't there? Has there been just a tiny glimmer that this actually might be turning? Now, granted, you're basing this off the back of a win against Burnley, who are in a bit of trouble, And so we can basically discount that. And suddenly we're basing this all on the Watford results. We're basing it on the fact that Chris Smalling looked like Alan Shearer when he scored a goal at the weekend. And this is why Manchester United might be able to finish ahead of Juventus in the Champions League group. So I accept that that's absolutely ridiculous. But ultimately, sport is all about clinging on to those little moments of hope. And who knows what little kind of spark will ignite a Manchester United season. It needs some sort of ignition, obviously, after the Spurs defeat. And I suspect that they've got something.
Darren, what else going on?
Yeah, Liverpool fans, Ger, waking up in fine form this morning. As you've discussed, Roberto Firmino, the hero, he netted the dramatic win as the Reds beat Paris Saint-Germain 3-2 in their Champions League opener. Manager Jurgen Klopp feels it is a crucial victory, and he piled the praise on Daniel Sturridge after the game.
An outstandingly strong opponent, so it was necessary that we played good. Atmosphere was fantastic. So special to do these things in that stadium, and it was nice. Great performance of Daniel. To be honest, I said the three in midfield did an outstanding job, but they only can do it when they're both two wingers and in how we play it. And the number 9 is helping in all these situations. So keep the formation compact. It was fantastic. I said to Daniel before the game, we're in the best shape since I know you, physical wise, and now we have to use that, and that's what he did. Super game, super goal.
There's a lot of people on social media comparing Thomas Tuchel's face to Phil Neville's face. Do they look alike? I just, he was obviously in the background of that photograph there. I really don't see it. They were saying it in the office last night, and then when I went home I saw it on Twitter as well, and I think exotic Phil Neville is how he was described.
Tanned Phil Neville,
exactly. I'm sure we can get a photograph up.
They both have the same kind of scowl. They both look like they'd look weird. They'd scare you if they smiled.
Yeah, exactly.
I see a bit of the shape. It's like the cheekbones and the skinny cheeks. That's it.
So here we go. We've got them both up on screen here. Like. I don't see it personally. I think it's one. I don't know how this doppelganger question has managed to grow legs over the past 24 hours, because I just don't see it.
I can kind of see it. The cheekbones, the facial expression, the inability to smile and look happy.
The constant longing of sadness in his eyes. The morbid nature of one's soul.
Speaking of someone who had sadness in his eyes last night on, the Tottenham boss, Mauricio Pochettino.
He was there, folks. You see what he did?
He was not very happy. He felt they didn't deserve to lose their Champions League clash with Inter Milan. They conceded 2 late goals to go down 2-1 in Italy. Pochettino forced to defend his team selection after that game. He left Kieran Trippier and Toby Alderweireld at home for the match. And one reporter asked, should he have done differently? Would he have done differently? And he slapped that suggestion down.
Why? Why disrespect the players that are in the pitch? You can blame me and say, Gaffa, you were so rubbish in your election of the starting 11. But please, don't disrespect the people or the player are playing because it's my decision. Of course, Trippier, Alderweireld, we have 25 players, and you believe that, and sometimes you behave with your question. You ask me like only can play 11, and another 13 or 14 player are rubbish. I think it's so easy. It's so easy to. I don't know. Sorry, but I am so disappointed because I am a person that respect you a lot and respect the player. And when my decision are to play with 11, you must respect my decision because I am the manager. And you cannot disrespect. You are you show too much disrespectful to the player that play in the position.
Well, it sounds a little bit like Cartman. Respect my authority.
He took it very personally, though. He seemed to really take offence to the suggestion that the players he brought weren't good enough.
I mean, I can understand that. It's like they're Spurs players. They're in my Champions League squad. What do you expect?
And they were 5 minutes away from being the heroic second string.
I can see why you get pissed off at that. Like it wasn't the second string really. He has traditionally changed his team a lot. It's just that Trippier is playing well at the moment, and also is English, and so therefore undroppable.
Yeah, has he changed his team a lot, or
changed his fullbacks a lot?
That's what I was just about to say. He's changed his fullbacks a lot. I'm not sure if he changed the core of his team that much at all. In fact, I would say that they've probably got the thinnest core of a squad in the top 6 in the Premier League.
Well, I was looking at the bench last night. So Danny Rose, Wanyama, Lucas Moura, Llorente,
but it's
Harry
so,
Winks. It's not a.
It's so uniform though. It's so sort of, this is the sub that you have to make because you've got your 15 or 16 players. Dembele comes off, Wanyama goes on, Harry Kane needs a rest, Llorente starts. There is almost like a book of managing Tottenham Hotspur at the moment, that this is the player that slots into this spot when X or Y is tired, and there is no sort of creativity. At least with Manchester United, you look at a Jose Mourinho team sheet and you're like, God, I wonder what he can do here. With Spurs, you know exactly what he's going to do.
Well, that's not a negative.
That's not
everybody understanding what their role is.
Not
completely.
necessarily negative. I didn't say it was negative, but I just think that the idea that Pochettino can chop and change at will is just not true.
Or the idea that it would have changed the result. The fact that they conceded 2 late goals, bit of a sucker punch, and just a suggestion, it was the fact that he rubbed it in so quickly afterwards. Like, Mauricio, do you think you made a really big mistake in hindsight, despite the fact that these extraordinary circumstances occurred and probably couldn't have been prevented by even if those 2 players had travelled?
It does feel like he touched a bit of a nerve though as well.
Definitely.
I'm the manager!
Yeah.
It's like, my daughter.
At one stage, they actually edited out of the version they sent down to us, but at one stage he said, my players are not rubbish, they're not shit.
All right.
Yeah, so he really seemed to take offence to the idea that leaving the lads out was a big bad move.
All right. A reminder that OTB AM is live with Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products.
Meanwhile, Wes Hoolahan enjoyed a winning debut for West Bromwich Albion last night. They secured a 4-2 championship victory over Bristol City. The former Shells man came off the bench for the final 15 minutes of that game. It was a bad night for Preston. They lost 3-0 to Leeds. Alan Brown was in the starting 11 for them. Graham Burke, an unused sub for that match. Aston Villa beat Rotherham 2-0. Conor Horan started for Villa. Richie Towell and Ryan Manning were in the Rotherham 11. While Derby drew 0-0 with Blackburn. Ireland defender Richard Keogh started for Derby. Darrell Lennon and Derek Williams were in the Blackburn side for that game. While the former British Prime Minister Tony Blair could be in the running to be the next chairman of the Premier League. His name reportedly came up at informal discussions at last month's club's meeting. Other names being floated for chairman or potentially the chief executive job are the former BT boss Gavin Patterson and the man running Sky Sports Barney Francis. Well, the Mayo Ladies football row rumbled on last night. The Connacht Council have upheld Carnachan's reinstatement to league and championship action, which affords them the chance to defend their crown and titles. The 8 Carnachan players involved in the walkout from the Mayo senior team before the All-Ireland qualifier with Cavan, though, have been suspended from club action for 4 weeks. That suspension kicks in today, while the club have been fined €500 for bringing the game into disrepute. Well, the GAA president, John Horan, says the time might be right to appoint a high-performance director. His comments came at the launch of an ESRI report on the strain of playing Gaelic games. Research shows that senior inter-county commitments can take up 31 hours of a player's week and lead them to compromising other aspects of their life. Horan believes the GAA could copy the IRFU and appoint the equivalent of David Nucifora to deal with the pressure placed on players. He's quoted as saying today in the Irish Times, "We are at a point, and it's been shown in the stats, where our younger players are coming under more pressure than our older players because of the multiple commitments to college, under 20, under 21 and to senior team." Horan then posed the question, is it time for us as an organisation to take on board a character similar to David Nucifora in rugby, where we have an actual player welfare officer who ties in with our players, who dictates what is appropriate or not appropriate for our players to engage in?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I'm not sure if Nucifora is actually the person that they really mean, because basically his job is to manage the business of the contracts and make sure that the succession lines are all through.
He's retention and recruitment more so than player welfare.
Yeah, and there's probably somebody else at each of the clubs who is clocking the minutes and the amount of times that players are having impacts, and that all gets fed back. So somebody somewhere is managing that. Like, you do think that there could be an app for every inter-county player from a development, from the time that they first come to a development squad, the training hours get logged and you can't go over them, or if you do go over them, then clubs are told you are risking this player's health, and so that there's like an understanding that it is your fault if this player burns out and isn't part of our future. One of the other interesting things that they talked about obviously in the report was the amount of travel that so many inter-county teams have to do, the disadvantage that, say, Monaghan, I think, have 24 players living outside Monaghan, Mayo have a bunch of players living in Dublin. This is just one of those things that is actually of benefit to the Dubs, that they've the shortest amount of distance to travel, because we have such a huge industrial centre here. Cork obviously benefit a bit as well, and there's no real way to balance that without the GAA becoming a lobby organisation to try and resettle the Western Seaboard and to push industry there, and to, I actually think that this might not be the worst thing for them to do, to showcase small local industries and say we are a community organisation who is involved in trying to keep jobs in the counties.
And that's the problem for the GAA, is that anyone who is able to keep a job in their county, a lot of them tend to be GAA-like jobs, like teachers or games development officers, or some of them work in financial institutions, local banks. So it's very, very difficult, particularly when so much of, as you mentioned, Jerry, the industry is based in the capital city. It's hard for players to commit to staying at home.
Yeah, totally. And also, like, you can be a games development officer for a period of your life, but it's not something that I think many people are going to do for their entire lives or careers. It doesn't look like the finance is there to give people increments the whole way up to a point where you're retiring at 60, having done 40 years as a games development officer just yet. Like, we don't have that culture. They probably don't have the money to be able to pay for that.
Yeah, just on your initial point about the 31 hours a week and, say, clubs monitoring their players to avoid burnout, like, that's obviously the reason why players at intercounty level get so badly wrecked, is that over the winter months they're playing so many club games and suddenly it becomes a 12-month calendar. Good luck trying to have a bottom-up approach from that, because I think it makes far more sense if you're going to have an app that you're going to actually have science involved in this. It's got to be from the county team. If you're going to limit minutes and training sessions, it's got to be with the county team first. Good luck trying to get that into clubs.
So the development squads, the inter-county development squads from the age
That'd
of
be the
14.
way to do it.
Yeah.
But obviously when you go to your club in the winter, it's like you're at their disposal and that's it.
We're talking doppelgangers a little bit earlier on. Darren, who's yours?
Great shout.
I don't see it personally. I think it might be a bit of the ginger beard.
Well, there's not too many good ginger beards in the world, and you both have one of them, so fair play.
That's the nicest thing you've ever said, Owen.
Somebody in Periscope suggested that to us. So.
Really? It's Niall McGrath's favourite one. Niall McGrath will do that just to annoy me, because I don't know why it annoys me, but I just find it annoying when he says it.
All right, but everybody else is okay.
Everyone else is fine. Thanks to the Periscoper, he's all right.
Yeah, have you been eating any contaminated meat products recently?
Kebab yesterday.
Here's Jason Quigley and Boxing Hall of Famer Ray Mancini on Triple G and Canelo from this week's Off the Brawl, our brand new fight show.
I would definitely have told him to start pushing Canelo back, because Canelo was on the front foot, and as we all know, judging in Vegas, they love an attacker. They love somebody coming forward, forcing the fight. Even if the shots aren't landing clean, they love people just wanting it more, showing more heart, and letting big shots go. So the likes of Golovkin, I thought he needed to be a bit more busier. He needed to push Canelo back a little more, because when he actually did, he looked good and he landed some shots. I honestly do think, stripping it all back, I think Golovkin has seen his best days, and I think they're behind him now. He definitely wasn't as sharp. He definitely didn't have the same snap or same that power that was so devastating in all his other fights. I didn't see that in his fight. I seen him breathing a lot. I seen him wincing a lot. And, to be honest, I think that Canelo got Golovkin at the perfect time. That 6-month ban, I think, worked in his favour. And, 6 months at that age, at that level, can mean the difference in winning and losing a world title.
Triple G won that fight. He won it. I thought he won it more impressively this time than he did last time. He won it last time, and he won it this time. I'm impressed with Canelo. I like Canelo. Don't get me wrong. He's a good fighter, tremendous fighter too. But I was surprised he kept coming in, and Triple G boxed him. But I think a couple of things happened. I don't think the first fight, I think he was, respected the power more, and then he felt him, so he didn't, he didn't respect his power as much. And two, I think Triple G got old. A lot of times you see it happen, a guy gets old in the ring.
Happens overnight.
Oh, sometimes, yeah. In that fight, he looked old, because times he would have turned it on before, he didn't do it.
Ray Mancini speaking on Off the Brawl, our brand new fight show, which is available for download on podcast. Just go to the highlight stream on iTunes or wherever it is you get your podcasts. Or, of course, better still, go on to youtube.com/Off the Ball. You'll get the full show there, and you can hit subscribe. And every time we do some good stuff, we'll let you know about it if you subscribe to our slot right there. You were obviously in the middle of that Ray Boom Boom Mancini interview.
Yeah, myself and Ronan were chatting to him. He was on last night's show, the full podcast, obviously available. He was in this part of the world for like a charity event over in Birmingham, kind of stopped in Dublin for a night and managed to pop in the studio. So obviously did like a really great interview on the show last year where he spoke about everything, including his fight with Kim, who died in the ring in 1982. So that's obviously kind of the centre point of his career, and he tells the story as well. And it's a remarkable sort of attitude he has to kind of overcoming that, because it's such an incredible thing to happen to one person, where this inadvertently happens, where afterwards you're celebrating really, and you've been told this guy's been carried out of the ring and he's in hospital and he's not doing too good, and suddenly years down the line this suddenly becomes the very thing that defines you, and people are asking you things like, what's it like to kill a man and stuff like that. It's such a dark part, but such an incredible part of an incredible career. He's obviously a former lightweight champion, boxing Hall of Famer, such a great talker, and is so open about his past, and is so open about the fact that did change things in boxing. But at the same time, he says in the interview that wasn't the thing that brought boxing from a 15-round spectacle to a 12-round spectacle. He says the only reason that boxing is 12 rounds is because of television. So
they couldn't stand the length of time.
Just a bit too long. So for any people who out there think that, you know, some good might have come of that, or that the boxing authorities looked at themselves in the mirror and said, listen, this is just too brutal to go on for 15 rounds. It was actually, we'll probably make a bit more money if this becomes 12 rounds, because the television bosses think it's a more attractive proposition.
Yeah.
So that was just one of a number of things we spoke about. It's kind of like a whistle-stop tour through his career. Irish heritage. His grandmother is Flynn. So he's got Italian blood and Irish blood. He was never not going to become a boxer growing up in the United States.
A heady combination. Okay, so we were talking to you through the newspapers a little bit earlier on, but we ended up going to the Champions League a little bit earlier than usual. I think I had done pretty much all of the broadsheets. I had done the Indo, I had done the Examiner and I'd done the Indo, got the Irish News for you here as well. So, county demands affecting mental health, says study. Which is interesting. The SRI are backing up the whole notion that the amount of time and commitment is putting a strain on players' mental health. When the Mayo Ladies mentioned mental health, people suddenly went weak at the knees, go and prove it. Let's see the time that you had off work. Let's see the doctor's certificates. It's like, but the SRI have said that actually playing intercounty, it puts such a demand on your time that it can have an impact on your mental health. So.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it, about the story. As soon as that was mentioned, and I guess, like in terms of the mediation process, in terms of the solution that was found, or that the county board are trying to find, clearly the topic of mental health wasn't really discussed at all. It wasn't really considered. It was kind of brushed under the carpet. And that's not to say that this is like a unique part of the current Mayo Lady situation. That's just a part of Irish society and sport at the moment, really. I think there's just a general misunderstanding of it all. And, you know, like they said it themselves in their statement 2 nights ago, that they've been referred to as weak and hysterical and all that sort of stuff. And I think that all kind of feeds into it. But at the same time...
And that accurately predicted the response to the statement too. It was like, this is how everybody has responded to us so far. And then, without actually listening to the audio, most people have gone, wow, you're just weak and hysterical. I can't believe you're so weak and hysterical.
But that's what I was just about to say. Like, I think, like, just get into this for a moment. Like, I think when it comes to Peter Leahy's situation, I think there's large elements of that you can kind of sympathise with in terms of player management, in terms of, you know, often towing a hard line, which is often necessary. And then there's also another half of me which really sympathises with the player's point of view, in terms of, you know, if they're saying that this is stuff that's really affecting their mental health, then you've got to take that at face value, then this is a really serious issue. So ultimately, I think that there's very valid points on both sides, but yes, when you look at how this has been discussed, particularly on social media, it's almost as if this very nuanced discussion is the most unnuanced discussion I've ever seen, where people almost have a preconceived notion of which side they want to pick and have doubled down on it, despite the fact that we've heard more from both parties. It just doesn't make sense to me. Is this part of the human condition? Is this part of where we're at in the year 2018, where everything is either black or white now, and you pick a side, and you better believe you've got to stay with it. You cannot change your mind. You cannot possibly listen to the other side. And when you do listen to the other side, you've either got to refer to Peter Leahy as a crazy aggressor, or if you're on Peter Leahy's side, you've got to refer to the women as weak and hysterical. So people have battened down the hatches and picked their side, and this has become... like an absolute war of attrition between two sides in an argument, when in actual fact this is actually one of the most grey area topics that we've discussed on the show. So I just don't understand why that has been the reaction, but that's certainly how I've seen it.
The Secretary of the Mayo LGFA County Board was on last night with Owen to discuss the situation in Mayo. He said that yesterday was the first time he heard the county players refer to mental health issues.
That was new to us in terms of that particular statement. There was nothing raised that we would have said. We did. How about it this way now? What we had was we had a situation that where players there might have been an issue. Peter would have raised something with us if he thought there was an issue. When we did raise those issues, there was nothing to be dealt with further on because we spoke to those players. In terms of mental health issues, where these things can affect people in different ways, and it takes over a period of time. When you look at this happening from the 5th of July onwards for us from a county board to now, which is just over 2 months later, some of these things take a while to sink in with different people. So we weren't aware of any mental health issues, or that wasn't raised to it specifically at that meeting.
And did Peter Leahy have any idea? Like, I'm just trying to establish here, was the mention of mental health yesterday, was that the first time that became known by the Mayo LGFA County Board, the first time that became known by Peter Leahy?
Yes, it did, yeah. It became known that no other player
no idea before last night
raised mental health issues to us, or any form of health issues caused by them leaving the panel.
Yeah, so a bunch of people got in touch to say that it didn't appear as if the Mayo LGFA were saying that the first time that they'd heard the audio of Sarah Tierney was on the show last night. And so we got one of our production team to get in touch. And so the text exchange was just double checking one quick thing from the interview. Did yourself and the county board hear from Sarah Tierney, etc. in the press conference before you released your own press statement? Answer, we had most of our statement prepared in advance. Okay, thanks, Kevin. So was tonight on the show the first time you heard that particular Sarah Tierney audio? Yes, I didn't get to see the news earlier. Okay, thanks, Kevin. Do you know which members of the county board were involved in drafting the statement? Just looking for clarification. All of the executive had an opportunity to review and suggest alterations to it. Then it could only be signed by the executive. And last question was, thanks. And is the executive the entire board, or who's on the executive? And am I right in thinking you're part of the executive? And we just hadn't got a final answer to that last question there. So just to clarify, it kind of, at various stages during the interview, it did seem as if the county board had heard parts of the press conference, but in the aftermath, we expressly made sure that their spokesperson last night, whether or not he had heard it before the statement had been written, and it turns out that the Secretary of the Mayo Ladies County Board hadn't heard the press conference audio where the players gave chapter and verse on what they said were the details of the interactions with the Mayo manager that had led to them leaving the panel, and they hadn't heard that audio before they released the statement, which didn't seem like it made a lot of sense. No, because it did seem that the statement was a response to the press conference that the departed players had released the previous night and all that sort of stuff. So it didn't actually make sense to me at all. It didn't really compute that would be the case, but that's just the way it is. I suppose it was a coincidence that they were drafting it. I think that the statement by the LGFA County Board was actually in response to the previous statement, so the one that was released 2 weeks prior to yesterday. So we're talking, like that was the last sort of notable statement we've had was 2 weeks ago, and I think yesterday's LGFA statement was in response to that, not the one that happened the night before. That's kind of where we're at on that one. So they hadn't seen it, just to confirm that. This is going to come to exist in an academic textbook as how not to deal with a crisis situation. Yeah, it's a case study, isn't it? The thing is, do all good case studies have a resolution? No. No, they don't. I mean, there's a bunch of different resolutions to this one, that the players who've left never play again, that the manager leaves, that somehow... But even when the manager leaves, there's clearly going to be distrust between the players who stayed and the players who left. And maybe the players who left, maybe they don't play for Mayo again, and maybe that is the right solution. It's like it's a very awkward scenario. And we're still waiting for the precise nature of the details of the Connacht county board or Connacht Council decision. Just waiting for the precise plan of action from. It's been suggested that the Carnacon players have been banned, and whether or not they're going to appeal now is the big thing. Because ultimately, there are two separate stories here. There's the issue with the Mayo team, and then there's how the county board at Mayo are punishing the players from one club who were involved in that scenario.
Well, we wouldn't have the former if we didn't have the latter. Let's not forget that the only reason this story blew up is because of the expulsion of Carnacon. Right? That was like 12th of August or whatever it was. Richie had the timeline on the show last night. And that was when this kind of really spilled over. It was like, wait a minute, they're being gotten rid of, they're being ejected from Connacht competition. And I think then people started to pry a little bit into what actually happened prior to this, and maybe we wouldn't have all the statements we had over the last 2 weeks if it wasn't for that actual expulsion. And who knows, the mediation process that is all confidential, all going on behind closed doors, and we're told it's with one of the best mediators in the country, a tremendous mediator, that is something that might have actually resolved it all before the dirty laundry got out on the line.
All right, let's move on. We're turning our attention to NFL. So John Gonzalez of The Ringer was on last night talking about the Patriots' decision to trade for Josh Gordon. Pretty sensational course of events over the course of the weekend. Here's what John Gonzalez had to say.
It's interesting. The Patriots tend to take some flyers on wide receivers that might have fallen out of favor with other teams for various reasons. They did it with Randy Moss. It worked out really well. They did it with Chad Ochocinco, Nate Chad Johnson. It didn't work out so well. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes with Josh Gordon. He's an absolute physical monster, but he hasn't really played much over the last 5 years. 5 years ago, he had a really good season, and since then, obviously, he's had a lot of issues with substance abuse. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with him in New England.
Yeah, when you speak of substance abuse there, it did seem that was something of the past. Like, I think most people will have seen, anybody who's into NFL anyway, will have seen that interview he did with GQ last year where he spoke about getting over that addiction, and he spoke about actually managing that addiction, like using before matches and stuff like that, which was insane. But it seemed that he had been over that. Do we have any clarity as to what's happened over the last 6 months or so?
We don't, not really. He came back from the preseason pretty late, rejoined the team, wasn't in much of training camp because he said he was focused on his health and his well-being. And it seemed like the Browns were okay with that they were in the loop. And then I guess at some point along the way, they decided that they and Josh Gordon should probably part ways. And along come the New England Patriots and got a 5th-round pick for Josh Gordon, which frankly I'm kind of surprised they got anything for Josh Gordon after telegraphing that they were going to move on from him. But maybe New England was the perfect spot for him because, again, they have tried this before. They do need a wide receiver. And it could, physically, he has all the tools. It's just whether or not, with his mental health, his mental health and his substance abuse, whether he'll be able to do that.
Mike Carlson is with us this morning to tease out some of the other issues going on in the NFL, but we may as well start, Mike, and get your take on the Josh Gordon situation. It's still very unclear exactly what happened. There's a suggestion that he pulled his hamstring at a photo shoot and arrived late for training. Gets the announcement then from the Browns immediately that they're going to either cut him or trade him, and then he ends up going from the Browns to the New England Patriots. So if you were thinking Machiavellian around this, you would be thinking, geez, things worked out pretty well for Josh Gordon.
They may have. I get the sense, reading between the lines, that when he showed up with this pulled hamstring, which is now okay, apparently, he's announced at least, that it probably wasn't a pulled hamstring, and that the team felt by his behavior when he showed up that he may have relapsed. That seems to me to be glaring out between the lines. They sort of immediately announced they weren't going to play him on Sunday. They were going to release him on Monday when the waiver wire opened up. Now, having done that, they immediately realized there would be interest. So it's not surprising that they would stall releasing him and try to make a deal with someone, because although nobody might be interested in giving up much for him, once he went on the free market, there would be a bidding war of sorts between teams. So what the Patriots did by using that 5th-round pick was they get him at his contract with Cleveland, which is basically the veteran minimum. He's on like $700,000 a year. So prorated now. You're talking 600,000 to take a shot at him, and that's nothing in NFL terms. I wasn't in week one that impressed with how he looked. There didn't seem to be a sharpness or burst, but that might be part of the problem. Might be he hadn't practiced, and it will take him time to get up to speed. But the Patriots are weird in the sense that not only will they take chances on players with problems, although usually they're on team problems, not off-field problems so much, but their receivers have to be really smart. They have to be able to distinguish what the defenses are, alter plays in the middle of them, and be on the same page with Tom Brady. They signed Corey Coleman, who was another number 1 first-round pick that the Browns had released, and then the Bills released him because he couldn't learn the Bills' offense. Well, if he couldn't learn the Bills' offense, he was never going to learn the Patriots' offense. And so they signed him. A week later, they cut him in order to sign Josh Gordon. I suspect what they'll do with Josh Gordon once they feel they can play him is make things simple for him and use him for the threat that he is. Josh, you go long, and then everybody else runs the stuff in between. He is, like your guest said, a physical marvel, but he hasn't really played in 5 years.
The Patriots offense has not been particularly explosive at the start of the year, and automatically, because of his age, people go, oh, this must be to do with Tom Brady's aging. But really, it might be because they didn't have a downfield threat, and that actually, if everything is as corralled as it has been so far for the first 2 weeks, then it's almost impossible you can't just keep throwing the ball to Gronkowski, because at some point teams will have enough players around him to mark him properly.
Yeah, I mean, they did not look good at all against Jacksonville, but having said that, the offense almost could have moved the ball. But Gronk was double-teamed, and he's going to be double-teamed as long as you don't have another threat to do it. In the first series, you might have seen there was an incompletion to Gronkowski, and Telvin Smith is wagging his finger in Gronkowski's face. And then the replay shows he's pulled him back by his jersey. But of course, with Gronk, you can do that, and no one's going to throw a flag on you. And when you double team him, it becomes twice as bad. They ran, I think it's 25 receivers through camp now, moves since July 20, whatever, when it started. And some of those guys should have worked out, but didn't. Injury problems in some cases. Malcolm Mitchell has been with the team for a couple of years, but never been able to really get on the field since his rookie season. So they get Julian Edelman back, but Edelman's not a deep threat either. He's more of a great complementary receiver. Hogan is only a limited guy, and I just wonder what they will do if Gordon doesn't pan out. They go back to that dink and dunk kind of offense, which would be a whole lot better if they had a big running back to go behind it. But of course, Jeremy Hill is out for the season now, and Sonny Michel only played for the first time and limited because he's had hamstring problems as well.
Yeah, so no one's panicking. Obviously, it's September, and the Patriots in September are a very different beast from what they'll be in November or December. But at some point, the Belichick thing stops being as genius as it always has been, because every career ultimately in sport probably ends in failure unless they manage to ride off into the sunset one final time. But what's your take on, and knowing them as well as you do over the years, what's your take on where they are at the moment?
You're absolutely right. They always seem to have a bad game around this time of the year, and given the limitations of preseason, they tend to use it like you would preseason. OC said yesterday, the Patriots are an average team at almost every position. They don't have many star quality players, which is absolutely true. But when you look back, they never really have. They've always had a number of good guys. They're missing a couple of people. They're bad at a couple of spots. They looked slow against Jacksonville, but they looked slow against Atlanta in the Super Bowl in the first half of that game. They looked slow against Philadelphia at times. I think they will get back into some kind of playoff form because that's the way they are. They scheme and they figure things out, and they adjust to what they have or don't have. But I think they'll still be active in looking for a couple of parts that they need. I was looking back at their draft yesterday, and I would have done it completely differently. But you can't really argue with what they were trying to do. The weird thing in that draft is that they eschewed going after some people who might have been able to help them right away in in order to get veteran players and future draft picks, which tells me that Belichick isn't going anywhere soon. So I think Miami now is a definite threat to them in the division, which will be interesting because they haven't really had competition in the division, for a few years now.
Yeah, and that that'll be very interesting to see how that develops, and if Adam Gase kind of finally has a quarterback he can trust, he's going to be fit for the whole season, and to see what he can do, because we heard so much about his potential as an offensive coordinator and as an offensive mastermind, but we've never really seen him have Tannehill fit for a full season. So just to talk about Monday night's game, because a lot of people won't really focus too much on this. Chicago beat Seattle 24-17, but it's not really close, is it?
No, not at all. Seattle, Russell Wilson was running for his life most of the game. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. And their offense is a mess, and their defense right now isn't good enough to be able to carry them. And Chicago's offense is slowly more moving into a really good kind of good system with Matt Nagy, and they've got some talent there. And Mitch Trubisky looked a whole lot better than he had in the first half. They didn't take their foot off the pedal. I think Seattle is really they're in that kind of precarious situation. You would think New England is in as well. They really need to adjust. They need to get better on defense. They can't assume that their defense is going to intimidate people any longer.
There was an interesting piece from Sports Illustrated last week about the end of the Legion of Boom and that incredible defence, which won a Super Bowl and should have won 2 Super Bowls for Seattle, and basically the massive sense of distrust that existed in that locker room between, on one hand, it seems, Pete Carroll and his quarterback in Russell Wilson, and on the other side of that, everybody else, including Marshawn Lynch. I mean, the notion that Pete Carroll called a pass play at the line in the Super Bowl against the Patriots so that Russell Wilson would win the MVP was apparently a fairly common topic of conversation at Richard Sherman's wedding in the Dominican Republic last summer. That's mad.
Yeah, it's mad they have to go to another country to feel they can talk about this safely. But I think it's a kind of an exaggeration. Players tend to do that. I don't think you have that bigger picture plan going in. Although, having said that, we have seen it in sports. I certainly have, a number of times, most famously the Boston Red Sox not taking Bill Buckner out of the game because the manager wanted him to be on the field when the World Series ended, and then Buckner committing an error that his defensive replacement would have handled and had been in the late innings of games. So, but the play call wasn't Carroll's, so that kind of invalidates the whole thing. But I think what you had was a defense feeling they had been let down by the offense. And in Pete Carroll, you have a guy who players love to play for, but that rah-rah stuff can kind of wear off after a few years. And on successful teams, what Phil Jackson called the disease of me sets in, where everybody feels that they're the person responsible for success and they deserve to be paid for it. And of course, in the modern NFL, under salary caps, everybody can't get what they think they deserve. It's almost impossible, and you have to take care of quarterbacks first, and then everybody else after that. So, I think what we're seeing is more of a natural attrition, maybe exacerbated by the fact that you've got outspoken and very intelligent people like Richard Sherman, who aren't going to sort of sit by and accept the changes, shall we say, without putting up some kind of a fight. It'll be really interesting when he and San Francisco go up to Seattle, for the first time they play.
Yeah, for sure. Shaquille Griffin obviously is one of those stories from the summer. There's now 2 brothers playing for the Seahawks, which is kind of a slightly underreported aspect of that whole story.
Right.
How has the newest recruit been playing?
Well, he had 2 interceptions in that game, so it's not a bad start. He fits them pretty well, and I said that at the draft time because he's so fast, and he's so quick to the ball, and they know how to use him. And I think that's the positive story, where the dissension and all is the negative story around the Seahawks. And when a team is floundering, that's when the negative stories come in. And I've just decided to retire from commentary, so I'm going to see you guys now and go home midway through. Because I'm doing
Vontae
Davis. Speaking of dissension within the ranks and losing Cowboys, had you there for a second.
You totally did. I was like, oh, Jesus, what's going on?
That's like PTSD for all the Buffalo Bills fans out there.
Yeah, the day I retire from yakking, about football is going to be an interesting one. But I think we're seeing a lot of that in the early days of the season, where teams that aren't successful in our modern universe press. Everybody watching presses the panic button immediately, everything from Daniel Carlson getting cut, virtually immediately after the game by the Vikings because he missed 3 field goals, two of them in overtime that would have won the game. We're in a win now mentality, and everybody is. And when something good happens, it's the best thing that ever happened, and when something bad happens, everything's got to change and go. Hyperbole is the greatest thing ever.
I would have thought that maybe what happened with Philadelphia last season would have changed people's perceptions of that. Because obviously, I just watched the America's game, the Eagles one from last season recently. And, if you think back to how awful they were in the immediate aftermath of Carson Wentz going out. There's one game that Nick Foles kind of just rolls in and plays really well, but for the next 2 weeks after that, I think they scored 9 points. They were single-digit points anyway for a couple of games in a row. And even against the Falcons in the playoffs, there's a complete fluky situation where an interception gets thrown and then it gets deflected and they manage to somehow, I think Torrey Smith catches it, which completely changes the season. But by not panicking and by having a coach who didn't panic and by having a system that didn't panic, they were like, okay, we're going to be okay. And given that it's supposed to be a copycat league, you would think the whole notion of not panicking might maybe be something that could be fashionable.
Yeah, to do that, you need to have a coaching staff that inspires trust. Basically, you think that they can do it. In New England, it's in Bill we trust. And people moan that out even when things are going bad. Philadelphia, given the fact that it's probably the toughest sports market in the country, and that they were booing the Eagles at the first half of the first game of this season, having won the Super Bowl, leads you to suspect that something special was going on there. And my biggest question, Wentz is coming back now. Nick Foles sort of is what he is, and to get those 2 great games against Minnesota and against the Patriots from him. Keeping him on the best part of Nick Foles. And as you said, he had a good game before he had the bad ones, when he replaced Wentz. I wonder if either Frank Reich or John DeFilippo, the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, who are both gone now to 2 other teams, had a big part in that. And it's not that Foles has looked bad in the first 2 weeks of the season, but he's looked average. He's looked relatively ordinary. And I wonder if that's a factor of simply losing that cushion. And Doug Peterson, I think if you saw that, you saw he and the other coaches dreamed up stuff together. It was very much a group effort, and he's very open to that sort of thing. And I wonder if he just doesn't have that same kind of input with both of those passing savvy guys gone.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Any other final quick stories that you think we should talk about this week ahead of next week?
Well, I'm looking at my Vontae Davis notes because I had something else in mind that it reminded me of, but that's gone now. I think the interesting one is Tennessee, who they're playing Jacksonville this week, and we're doing the game. So I was looking at it. Tennessee on paper should be a really good team, and adding Matt LaFleur as the offensive coordinator, I thought was going to push them kind of to that level. talent-wise, they were second, I thought, only to Jacksonville, and with better coaching, they could be as good. They haven't shown that yet, and I'm really wondering why. When your best passer is your safety throwing the ball on a fake punt, and your second best passer is Derrick Henry, the 240-pound running back, throwing the ball on an option, you're in trouble. And Marcus Mariota is supposed to be better than that, and Marcus Mariota has played no better than Blaine Gabbert did. And so I'm doing that game, but I'm really trying to figure out the Titans, and I have that gnawing thing in the back of my head that one of these days it'll click for them, but I don't think I'm going to jump to the assumption that it will until after I see it. So that's what differentiates me from the everything's awful and everything's great kind of guys.
Yeah. Although
I refuse to go out on the limbs.
It does appear as if Jacksonville are going to be at least as good as they were last year, and if maybe, I don't know, there was some suggestion, Madam Romo, saying that in the playoffs last year, Blake Bortles became a man. If he continues, if that's true, if that's a real thing, which I definitely am not believing for a second.
Blake Bortles is not a man; he is a god.
With clay feet.
Yes, and they worship his idol, graven images all over Jacksonville.
Yeah. Anyway, look, I think that they could be really good. Mike, enjoy that game this weekend. Thanks a million. Who have you got this week? The Jackrabbits.
South Dakota State. They're my team. I've been there once.
Is that Carson Wentz's college, or is he North Dakota?
He's North Dakota.
All right.
Yeah.
Sorry for that faux pas.
Good Dakota.
That's okay. No problem. It's a great rivalry. North Dakota State, South Dakota State. But yeah, the Jackrabbits out of Brookings, South Dakota. I love it.
Nice one. Enjoy, Mike. Thanks a million.
Thanks, guys.
Very excited about the fact that Carson Wentz is back this weekend because I'm going to that game.
Yeah, you are. Up against the Indy Colts. Who's the best quarterback on the pitch on Sunday?
Fully fit. I don't know.
Honestly, Andrew Luck is back, isn't he? He's back.
Yeah. Well, not throwing any deep balls yet.
But still,
Carson Wentz was amazing. Looking back at that America's game, because I didn't actually know that much about the Eagles last season, to be honest, until they're getting good and you're seeing them week in, week out, you're hang on a second. But the first couple of games before, there's 10 games basically, he's fit for, and it's like, holy shit, he is amazing. And
he was MVP in weight.
And he's still unbelievably young.
Yeah. It's the way he's managed to conduct himself, I think, throughout his injuries, which is kind of the mark of the man. Such a young fella. Could have completely railroaded him, but it clearly hasn't.
Gordon is a playoff stash. He'll get plays here and there, but Bill will have a plan for him once he's up to speed. Edelman is back soon. That'll take the pressure off Gronk. Get Brady the short yard, says Robert Hardigan on YouTube. And Darrow too wanted to know, what did Mike make of the Titans against the Texans? Unprompted, he came up with a conversation about the Titans, but that game wasn't great, especially if you were on the Texans like I was. So here's Keith Andrews talking about Matt Doherty's performance for Wolves. The show went out a few days earlier this week, but normally the Keith Andrews show is with you every Thursday around about lunchtime. You can subscribe to all our podcast streams, football podcast in particular, and you get the Keith Andrews goodness. Here he is talking about Matt Doherty's performance for Wolves.
I don't see him there at all.
Okay.
Cyrus Christie, for the type of game it was basically a shut-up shop. That was the thinking on that side of whether they thought Bale was going to play on the left-hand side, where they doubled up with Seamus and him. I don't see Cyrus in that position. I see them very much as wing-backs. But having said that, most modern-day full-backs play like wing-backs now anyway. I think Matt Doherty coming on to play, he's very, very impressive. And I mentioned this the other day to Nathan on Off the Ball, that they all have different qualities, and the points that Martin was making about Matt Doherty. Matt alluded to it. He felt his issues were defensively, and I would be with him, because last year at Wolves, he probably wasn't tested enough defensively. He was like a wing-back. He was attacking time and time and time again, whereas this year, he's going to have to slide in as a back five and defend as an out-and-out right-back at times, like he did against Manchester City, for instance, and then they counter-attack from maybe a little bit deeper than they would be used to. But, I feel from him at the moment. But he needs to just keep his head down, keep going the way he's going. He can't affect, really, what Martin and the management team are thinking. He can only keep producing performances exactly like he did yesterday, which was very impressive.
Should have scored, though.
Yes, he should have scored, yeah. Should have scored. He's better at own goals, isn't he?
Oh, shots fired. Keith Andrews there speaking about Matt Doherty on the Keith Andrews Show, which went out a little bit earlier this week and is, of course, still available for you on youtube.com/off the ball. We're going to run you through the tabloids now, which we haven't done just yet.
Some of the papers we didn't get to earlier on. The Herald this morning is leading with Liverpool. Firmino's eye in for rescue. Late Liverpool winner cancels. PSG comeback. The back page of the Irish Daily Mail then this morning is leading with the Mayo story. Mayo hit back is the headline. Bands had it out as ladies split worsens, and you've got it's a red rocket as well. That's their headline on Firmino's late winner in Anfield last night. Golden Eye is the back page of the Irish Daily Star. I like that one. Klopp's lads off to a flyer with great victory. De Gea blanked criticism, says Jeremy Cross's article, and Mayo Chiefs defend Leahy. And then a couple of the UK back pages then. We'll start with the Daily Telegraph sports section. They lead with fantastic Firmino, Brazilian back from eye injury to conjure up late winner on night of high drama at Anfield. And then finally, The Guardian goes with that picture as well, but the main article on the back is, you disrespect the players. Pochettino loses his cool after Inter's late show stuns Spurs.
Okay, just going to tell you a little bit about Liam Miller's testimonial dinners on next Tuesday the 25th in Cork City Hall. It's obviously going to be a star-studded night of entertainment, and the lads in the evening show have a pair of tickets to give away. If you want to go along or be with a chance of going along, make sure you stay tuned to the radio show tonight. But if you did miss out on tickets, which is obviously a sellout, you can still contribute to the fundraising efforts by taking part in the silent auction. There are signed jerseys from Bobby Charlton. It's the 1968 European Cup winning replica. There's a Ronaldo shirt, there's a John Giles Ireland and Leeds shirt, there's concert tickets, there are trips to PGA Catalonia as well, and loads more. You can get your bids in now at galabid.com/Liam. That's GALABID, galabid.com/Liam.
So yesterday you had a Spurs fan in studio with you, which is probably the main reason why you didn't celebrate Sol Campbell's birthday. That's the only reason I can assume. So it was an interesting day for Campbell. Obviously the fact that it was his birthday won, but he posted 2 videos on social media. We'll play them back to back to you here in a moment. But what you need to do is you need to listen out for the fact that he mentions his age in the first video and then fails to mention his age in the second video. He deletes the first video and puts up a replacement video because I think he forgot that he's actually only 43 years of age, not 44. Have a look at this.
43 years old today. Yes, Sol Campbell. Got to get it right though, because some people thought I was 44 for some strange reason. No, I'm definitely 43. Thank you for all the kind messages around the world. I'm deeply touched by that. I really appreciate that, and my family as well. Hopefully I'm like fine wine, gets better with age, when you're older, when you're wiser. But I'd like to say thank you for all the messages out there. Stay strong out there and keep on striving for a brighter future. Thank you guys all around the world. Hi, Sol Campbell here. Thank you for all your kind messages around the world for me. My family and I are truly touched by all the messages. Hopefully I'm like fine wine and get better with age. 1 year older, 1 year wiser, as the good old saying goes. But stay strong, everybody out there. Keep positive and keep striving for a brighter future. Thank you guys all around the world. Thank you very much.
Of course, I meant to say that. Sol Campbell forgot that he's 44 and not 43. Even I'm getting confused by Sol Campbell's age. I'm not quite sure who's been the real star of social media this year. Sol Campbell or Ross Kemp? Whose selfie videos have made the biggest impact? I'm thinking Campbell.
Ross Kemp, I was like, oh, what was that again? It was during the World Cup.
Yeah, where he'd just be topless and he'd be like the white Incredible Hulk.
Okay. Yeah, I have a lot of sympathy with Sol Campbell forgetting his age. I'm like, who cares?
Well, no, it's the fact that he addressed it. He's like, definitely 43, not 44. Stop. Check your Wikipedia, mate.
On tonight's show, Nate Boyer, the former Green Beret US military vet and Seattle Seahawks long snapper on the Colin Kaepernick situation. Wednesday Night Rugby with Matt Williams and Keith Wood. And Kenny Cunningham in studio as Man United and City get their Champions League group stages underway. Nate Boyer was involved with telling Kaepernick to kneel.
Exactly. So Colin Kaepernick obviously sits for his first anthem protest, and Nate Boyer isn't happy. Obviously, he's a former Green Beret, former NFL player. He writes an open letter in an army magazine saying that it's kind of disrespectful, blah, blah, blah. And Kaepernick gets in touch with him. They meet up in San Diego. They have a good conversation to the point where Boyer gets into a position where he is believe it or not, in this century, given everything that we've spoken about around other topics, actually changes his opinion somewhat, actually listens to the other side of the story and gets himself into what he calls the radical middle. That is his political stance. And he says, you know what? I completely respect your right to protest. I completely disagree with it. Sitting down maybe is a little bit irreverent to the troops. Why don't you take a knee? Nobody's ever taken a knee before. Nobody kneels in a disrespectful way. That would be a very kind of poignant way to get your protest across. And so the taking a knee was born. And the very first time we did it, Boyer was standing right beside him, singing the national anthem out. There's quite a famous picture of the two of them.
All right, good stuff. That's all coming up on the radio tonight on News Talk. That's your lot today. We'll be back tomorrow, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at 7:45. Until then, good luck.
OTB AM. Thanks to Screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a dedicated call centre.